Rothstellar and Yennecar bowed before Princess Sila and expressed that he had committed a discourtesy, explaining that he had not known she was in his room. Sila responded with a sly smile, holding up the envelope as if to emphasize her point. She remarked that such behavior was rude and improper. She reflected that making 4 or 5 common women cry was a fairly classic pastime for high-ranking nobles. She added that she had no intention of interfering with Confucius's personal hobbies. Still, she warned that it was better not to be too sincere about such matters. She cautioned that if one acted that way, everything could easily turn upside down. She mentioned having seen many noblemen manipulated by lowly people, and described it as utterly ridiculous. Hearing all of this, Yennecar began to cry. Rothstellar then thanked Princess Sila for her advice, and respectfully asked whether she had any business with him. Sila placed the envelope from his hand onto the table, and indicated that she would not speak for long. She suggested that if one looked closely, it would become clear that Pina, that child, thought too much. She referred to the Emperor's seat, and implied that it did not suit her. With a faint smirk, Sila suggested that he should instead stay by her side. Yennecar, upon hearing this, grew visibly worried and looked at Rothstellar for reassurance. Rothstellar once again lowered his head, and humbly declared that he could never dare to hold the hand of the first princess with his lowly hands. Even though he was a member of the Rothstellar family, he stated that such a precious body was not something he could ever lay his hand upon, and that such an idea did not even exist for him. Sila also bowed her head slightly and laughed, saying that it was pleasant to hear such words. She remarked that he was making noise, but even if it was merely verbal, it did not matter. Then she fixed him with a steady gaze and made it clear that he was rejected. She stated that Sir Crepin, Confucius's father, would also stand on her side, and that, under his influence, Confucius would have no choice but to choose wisely. At that moment, Rothstellar reflected internally. He recalled that because of this alliance, Princess Sila of Frost would cooperate with Crepin's plan to obtain the power of the evil god. In the end, she would be unable to fully control that power and would be devoured alive by Mebula. He also remembered that among the characters in Act 4, Marlowe was the most terrifying, realizing they could never truly be together. He searched for an excuse to refuse her offer. He expressed that thanks to the reign of His Majesty Emperor Chloe, the empire was now living in an age of peace. In times like these, he believed that what was needed was a virtuous ruler. He declared that he had no doubt Princess Pina would one day become an empress worthy of her position. Hearing this, Sila's composure broke. Rage filled her expression as she clenched her fist, crushing the envelope in her hand with all her strength. She cast a death glare at Rothstellar and asserted that Pina had no interest in imperial power. Emphasizing that he should know this, Rothstellar calmly responded that even if she claimed to have no interest in the emperor's seat at present, he would continue to silently believe in Princess Pina and wait. In his thoughts, he acknowledged that there was no better excuse than Pina to refuse Sila's offer. After hearing his unwavering stance, Sila fell silent. A heavy and tense silence settled between them, lingering in the room without resolution. Princess Sila fixed her gaze on Eid Rothstellar and slowly walked toward him. With deliberate confidence, she lifted his chin and declared that her mouth was watering. When Rothstellar asked what she meant, she answered with a sly smile that she enjoyed looting, and that integrity was usually most beautiful when it was broken. She added that she wanted to see how far Confucius's convictions toward Pina would go. Hearing this, both Yennecar and Eid Rothstellar were disturbed. Yennecar looked at Rothstellar with visible worry. Rothstellar thought to himself that, to be honest, he did not support Pina and that there had been a misunderstanding. Sila calmly responded that there was plenty of time, as the social gathering would last for 5 days. She told him he should feel the great gap between herself and Pina, and that if he changed his mind, he could inform her at any time. With that, she left the room. After her departure, Yennecar and Rothstellar bowed politely and expressed their gratitude for her consideration. Sila smiled and casually remarked that they would see each other later. Once alone, Yennecar and Rothstellar spoke together. Yennecar insisted that she was not an easy person either. Rothstellar could only sigh, shaking her head in frustration and grabbing her hair. Yennecar lamented that she should have answered eloquently like Lordle. She reassured herself by saying that she was not that easy of a person, yet thinking about it made her feel bad. Rothstellar told her that she was not that kind of person in the first place. Still feeling down, Yennecar reminded him that Sila was a princess, a beauty, and that she kept flirting with him. Shifting the topic to something more pressing, Rothstellar asked whether she had discovered anything after searching the entire mansion. Yennecar explained that the mansion was enormous and that it had been quite a hassle, but she had gathered some information. She mentioned that a mug had asked for information. Confused, Rothstellar asked about the mug. Yennecar clarified that below the Duke of Crepin's private study was a religious school site. It was said that an unusually large amount of magical power could be felt there. However, according to the structure of the mansion, the space beneath the study was supposed to be the kitchen. It would be strange to sense such a vast amount of magic in a kitchen where employees worked. She concluded that it was certainly suspicious and suggested that he should see it for himself. However, she warned that the study was a place Duke Crepin visited from time to time, and when empty, it was always locked tightly, making investigation difficult. Rothstellar decided they had 5 days and should take their time while waiting for an opportunity. He assured her that the door would always be open and that if anything came up, she could come to his room at any time. Embarrassed, Yennecar touched her cheeks as they turned bright red and shyly repeated the idea of going to his room anytime. Rothstellar clarified that there was a lot to do. He had not even read half of the letters exchanged between Arwen and Eid yet. If Yennecar stayed in her room every day, Crepin would grow suspicious. He needed to read the letters whenever possible and investigate Crepin's study when the opportunity arose. To avoid suspicion, she must behave sincerely from now on and attend the social gathering schedule properly. With that, the social church gathering began, marking day 1. It was meant to gradually build excitement ahead of the long 5-day schedule, so everyone tried to relax and rest. The calm atmosphere continued until an unexpected figure appeared. Princess Sila entered the venue wearing an elegant, off-shoulder midnight blue gown that shimmered like a starry night sky. The dress was form-fitting at the top and flowed dramatically at the bottom, with a high slit revealing one leg as she stepped forward. 2 men in black tuxedos with red bow ties stood behind her like escorts, serious and attentive, reinforcing her authority and status. The entire hall turned to stare at her presence. Amid the silence, a young woman approached Sila, bowed her head respectfully, and introduced herself as Tanya Rothstellar, the current head of the Rothstellar family. She expressed her honor at meeting the princess in person. Sila responded courteously, saying it was nice to meet her, and remarking that she seemed like a good person. She added that the prestige of the Rothstellar family would likely endure for several decades. Tanya then apologized for the modest scale of the meeting, explaining that it was only the first day of the event. As the gathering continued, a waitress approached carrying a tray of juice and wine. Sila calmly picked up a glass of wine and turned her attention to Tanya. She remarked that since she had arrived early in the first place, there was no need to worry too much. She added that thanks to Tanya, she had already seen something interesting. At that very moment, Eid Rothstellar entered the hall. Eid Rothstellar had short blonde hair brushed back neatly and sharp, calm eyes that gave him a serious and authoritative presence. He wore a white military-style uniform adorned with gold embroidery and gold buttons, along with structured epaulets that emphasized his rank. A black tie rested neatly beneath his collar, and a wide black sash wrapped around his waist, completing his dignified and noble appearance. The moment he stepped inside, murmurs spread across the hall. The guests whispered among themselves, recognizing him as the boy in question. They recalled that this time, the former successor seemed to be winning the lottery. They noted that Eid Rothstellar looked stronger than before. He appeared slightly bigger, much smarter, and entirely different from the past. Sila watched Eid Rothstellar approach and smiled faintly. Turning to Tanya, she commented that Tanya had a good brother. Tanya responded with a proud smile, affirming that she was indeed proud of him. Sila's gaze lingered on Eid Rothstellar as she silently repeated his name in her thoughts. She reminded herself that 5 days remained, and that during those 5 days he would see many things. As Eid Rothstellar came forward and formally greeted Sila, her thoughts continued to calculate the situation. She reflected that on the 3rd day, the adjutant of the Magnus Legion commander, who had taken over military power, Fulcus, would also be recruited. She considered that this might be enough. She also remembered that Archbishop Samuel of the Telos Church, who was scheduled to arrive on the 2nd day, was one of her people as well. Confident in her preparations, she hoped that Eid had learned a great deal. She believed this entire gathering would become a good opportunity. With that quiet resolve, Sila gently placed her wine glass back down. Across from her, Eid Rothstellar stared at her, the atmosphere between them charged with unspoken tension. As the first day of the 5-day event continued to unfold, the 2nd day of the social church gathering began with even greater tension than the first. As a religious symbol, the Telos Church held the highest authority on the continent. On this day, the carriage of the Telos Church finally arrived. The moment it entered the estate, the eyes of powerful men and nobles alike turned toward the saint's chamber. Her support carried enormous political significance. Whoever St. ClariS chose to stand beside, and whatever political meaning could be interpreted from the stories she shared, had the potential to reorganize the entire power structure of the continent. For someone like Sila, whose ambition burned fiercely, this was not a small matter. Long before this day, Sila had already established a connection with the new archbishop, Samuel, the man closest to the saint. That morning, Sila's butler arrived carrying a large arrangement of fragrant orchids. He explained that the language of the orchids symbolized purity, innocence, and eternal friendship. He added that no flower suited the saint better, and that it also carried the meaning of wishing for the smooth development of a relationship between the two sides. Sila, pleased, remarked that, as expected, he had excellent taste in choosing gifts. The butler humbly replied that it was too much praise. With quiet confidence, Sila smiled and stated that since she had already spoken to the archbishop, she would naturally be the first to see the saint. She reminded herself that there was no need to be overly aggressive from the start, and that it would be enough to leave a good impression. However, an elderly attendant approached her hesitantly and informed her that the saint was currently away. Sila froze in shock and demanded to know what he meant. The scene shifted. Elsewhere in the mansion, St. ClariS was already speaking warmly to Eid Rothstellar. She told him that meeting him like this in his senior's home felt special. To her, it felt like a romantic encounter, as though they had met by chance in a faraway travel destination. Her closeness and affectionate tone caused the two nearby waiters to lower their heads awkwardly in embarrassment. Eid Rothstellar himself did not seem particularly eager for prolonged conversation. Yet out of formality, he stated that it was an honor to meet her. ClariS gently took his hand and repeated that it was an honor and that she felt honored as well. She looked genuinely happy, her cheeks slightly flushed with shyness. Later, ClariS was seated inside Eid Rothstellar's room. Eid addressed her respectfully as saint and explained that in the end, he had brought her there under the pretext of introducing the Rothstellar mansion. He reminded her that every move the saint made attracted attention from all sides. He implied that she should be aware of that fact and act accordingly. He questioned why she seemed so excited. ClariS, however, sat cheerfully on the bed and replied that such attention had only been overwhelming when she was buried in the crowds of seeing Wangdo. Eid admitted honestly that he had been a little worried. ClariS explained that, when she heard the news that Senior Eid had won the lottery, she had been so happy she could have jumped for joy. She confessed that she had not expected to be treated particularly well. Eid responded that, to begin with, he had not been a very well-regarded person. He mentioned that he had planned to confront anyone who spoke unpleasantly about Senior Eid. Fortunately, it seemed that had not happened. Even if it did, he believed it was something he had to handle himself. He told her not to try to handle such matters alone. At that, ClariS stood up from the bed, walked toward him, and held his hand firmly. She said that they could handle it together. Eid Rothstellar stared at her in shock. Asking what she meant, ClariS suddenly grew extremely shy. Her cheeks turned bright red as she hesitantly asked Eid Rothstellar whether he was suggesting that she use her authority. She explained that if he continued to stay by her side at the dinner party that night, no one would dare to look down on him or treat him warily. Eid replied that if she told him so confidently to use her, then a person who readily accepted such an offer would seem strange. Hearing this, ClariS immediately lowered her head in embarrassment and clarified that it was not what she meant. She insisted that what was good was simply good. If possible, she believed it would be better to move in a direction that could benefit Senior Eid. She awkwardly added that, in the meantime, she also had her own thoughts. Though she struggled to express them clearly, Eid pointed out that she was only making things more complicated by attaching unnecessary justifications. ClariS's face became completely flushed. Gathering her courage, she grabbed Eid Rothstellar's hand tightly and declared that she would not list a long series of reasons. She admitted plainly that she needed a partner for the night and asked whether he would sing a song with her at the dinner party. She reasoned that publicly showing such a relationship would improve Eid's status as well. From her own perspective, there might also be advantages. Even if that was not certain, she believed there was a high possibility of good outcomes. Eid dryly reminded her that she had just said she would not attach strange justifications. ClariS protested that there was no need for him to be so sharp about it. She then declared firmly that at the dinner party that night, She would refuse every dance request from anyone who approached her, except for one person. A heavy silence fell between them. Unable to bear the tension, ClariS hurriedly excused herself. She said she needed to meet other guests, and added that by running to meet Senior Eid first, she might have unintentionally offended some people. Eid asked why she had insisted on putting him first. ClariS casually brushed it off, saying it was nothing, and then she left. Not long after, Tanya arrived and stared at Eid in shock. She demanded to know what he was doing. Eid asked why she was there. Tanya explained that she had searched everywhere for her brother's wedding outfit and had finally found him, only to see the saint beside him. She quickly corrected herself, saying that was not the main issue. Overwhelmed, she questioned what he was planning. She listed Senior Yenica, Senior Lucy, and now even Saint ClariS. She wondered how she was supposed to treat all three of them if things continued like this. Frustrated, Eid slapped his own forehead and muttered that it had simply happened that way. Meanwhile, outside the room, ClariS ran down the corridor. Her face still red, she stopped to catch her breath, then shyly smiled to herself. She reminded herself that this was not Sylvania Academy, but a fraternity gathering. Here, being the best at magic, having the most money, or being the highest grader did not necessarily matter. She reassured herself that, at the very least, within the Rothstellar mansion, she held the highest authority for tonight's dinner party. For this one evening, there would be no one capable of keeping her in check.